I love indie games. To me, they are a cure to a lot of the issues that are plaguing the games industry today. Things like bloated runtimes, microtransactions, and designs that have been used over and over in the hopes of appealing to a wide audience. Indie games are often the passion project of a small team that finds a fun game mechanic or cool story, and then usually delivers it in a small package. So if you're a fan of indies like me, you can discover a ton of interesting ideas in a modest amount of time. That being said, there are thousands of indie games each year. So how do you find the gems? You can try to keep up with the news and showcases, but there are so many these days it's hard to catch everything. You could wait for end of the year reviews and awards, but indies often don't get the spotlight they deserve.
And the game award goes to Sea of Stars. Congrats, Sabotage. Here are the nominees for Best Community
However,
Support.
I found one method that almost never fails, and that's to follow Devolver Digital. Devolver is an indie publisher, meaning they seek out interesting indies, then help to fund, market, and distribute them. To us players, they essentially function as a curator, doing the legwork for us to find the diamonds in the rough. Now, this isn't to say that every successful indie game was published by Devolver, or even had a publisher at all. What I am saying is, if you look at Devolver's history, they rarely miss. So to test my theory, I played 3 games that Devolver published in 2023 that I felt didn't get a ton of spotlight. In this video, I'll be breaking down my thoughts on Terra Nil, the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, and Gunbrella. And I'll let you know if they were the hits I expected, or if they fell short. Let's get started. The first game I decided to play was Terra Nil, developed by Free Lives. The reason Terra Nil initially caught my eye was that it was in a genre I'd never seen before, environmental strategy. In Terra Nil, you are tasked with restoring a barren planet by cleaning waste, introducing plant and animal life, and then completely removing all traces you were ever there. The concept itself is extremely clever, as it turns the often stressful strategy genre on its head by removing time pressure and making it relaxing. But it wasn't until I started playing that I realized this game was something special. You start a region by simply cleaning the ground and growing greenery. I particularly enjoyed filling in rivers and gaining bonus growth along their sides. Next, you put in more diverse plants. For these, you need to meet certain criteria, which requires more and more problem solving as the game progresses. In the final phase, you add in animals, each one requiring specific conditions. And lastly, the most satisfying step. You clean up all the buildings and machines you used, and take off to another area. It's a pretty simple structure, but it definitely isn't mindless, and the game did a great job of keeping things interesting. As you complete regions, you unlock new climates to tackle that have different issues to solve. In the tropical climate, you need to clean the ocean as well as the land. In the Arctic, your first priority is generating heat, so you can melt the snow and clean the earth beneath it. And in the continental region, hazardous materials from the previous civilization are unearthed and need to be purified. This game was extremely satisfying to play. Up front, it just feels good to restore life to a planet. But beyond that, it tickled my engineering brain in areas like, how do I fill this in most efficiently without leaving any empty spaces? How can I set this up so there are the right conditions for all 6 of the animals at once? How do I build a monorail so I can clean up everything as easily as possible? There aren't any rewards for doing things quicker or more efficiently. I just wanted to because I was having fun with the game's mechanics. And learning the mechanics pays off because each map is randomly generated. If you roll a region that's more difficult than usual, you might need to figure out how to solve a new problem. Here's an example. I want to introduce bears to this area, which means I need a forest on a hill. To create a forest, I need to perform a controlled burn, which will leave behind ashy nutrients. But I need something flammable to burn, which is usually finbos, which is created by putting a beehive on a tree. Usually a tree is randomly generated on a hill from the start, but this time there wasn't. So how do I get a tree from a forest on a hill where I'm trying to build a forest? This cyclical reasoning seemed impossible to overcome, until I realized that if I put a tree next to the hill, I can grow finbows on it, which will then allow me to burn and create a forest on top. Solving problems like this isn't required to see the credits of the game, but I wanted 100% completion, and Terra Nil rewarded me with interesting problems to solve. Lastly, I just want to talk about how beautiful this game is. The light piano soundtrack is perfect, and I especially love how it's timed to your actions. After you finish a region, there's an option to appreciate what you've restored. This was such a great feature for them to put in, because you can see all the work you did, and the close-ups on the animals are really cute. Also, there are special events for each region. As the game progresses, you get more tools for climate manipulation, mainly humidity and temperature. Each map has a list of bonus weather objectives, which will provide you resources. And if you get the climate to a specific point, you get a special weather event. I won't spoil them all, but I'll just say that the first one I got was the Aurora, and it took my breath away. Terra Nil isn't a perfect game. I've seen people complain about how short it is, and I have a few personal gripes with some of the UI choices. But on the whole, this is 100% a game worth playing if you're interested in strategy or puzzle games, or if the idea of restoring a planet in a relaxing setting sounds fun to you. Terra Nil exceeded my expectations, and I'm so happy I played it. The next game I played was the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood by Deconstruct Team. I originally wanted to play this game because I thought it had gorgeous art and the story intrigued me. But man, I was not prepared for how much I ended up absolutely loving this game. The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood is a narrative adventure where you play as Fortuna, a fortune-telling witch. Fortuna has been exiled for a millennium after predicting the downfall of her coven. 200 years into her sentence, she can't take the isolation anymore and summons a forbidden behemoth named Abramar. Abramar offers you the power to escape your sentence, but it will come at a cost. Over the course of the game, you craft your personal tarot deck, give readings to fellow witches, and try and find your freedom. Along the way, making decisions that heavily influence the story and ending. This game is incredible. I was expecting a cool story, but I wasn't expecting the degree of agency I would have to craft it. Many games with dialogue choices suffer from issues of binary good or bad, options feeling too similar, or just a lack of actual influence on the story. The Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood doesn't have any of these problems. Not only do your choices in dialogue and tarot readings all affect the story, but you can guide which choices you will have access to. As you move through the story, you will build your own tarot deck. This consists of using resources to build the background and art of each card. Depending on what elements you choose, the card will offer certain options if you pull it during a reading. As an example, here's the first card I made, Hymn to Fortune. And you can see that it will offer options surrounding leadership, purpose, justice, predestination, and luck. So, if you want your readings to be more kind, you can make kinder cards. If you want your readings to predict violence and conflict, you can make cards for that too, as long as you have sufficient resources. You get resources by performing readings for the characters in the game, and this is where the designers were very tricky. Let's say my friend asks for a reading. I pull a card and look at the possible interpretations. There's one that I think will be really good for her story, but another one gives me the resources I need for a card I want to make. Do I possibly doom my friend so I can make a cool card? Or do I stick to the story I want, have less cards in my deck, and possibly miss out on other choices in the future? I really like that the game forces you to make these types of gameplay decisions. I don't want to spoil anything surrounding the story, so I'll just talk about how this game made me feel. There are a few times where you're asked questions about what Fortuna believes in or what she desires. In these instances, I tried my best to answer honestly as myself, and that really elevated my experience. As someone in their 20s still trying to figure out their life and their place in the world, this game hit me hard. In existential dread, in loving oneself, in the importance of relationships. I just adored the themes this game explores. I really felt I was playing as myself in this game, and that just made the consequences of my actions much more fulfilling and more painful. And while all this is happening, a banger soundtrack by Fingerspit is playing in the background. It's like lo-fi beats to read tarot to, but but it isn't afraid to get epic at times. Listen to this brief sample of one of my favorite tracks, The Sister. So yeah, I adored this game. I highly recommend it to anyone who loves incredible narratives, sci-fi, witchy vibes, or is confused in their 20s. Don't sleep on the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. The final game I played was Gunbrella by Doinksoft. Of these 3 games, Gunbrella was the one I knew the most about going in, as I played the demo earlier in the year and really dug it. Unfortunately, it became the only one I was disappointed by. Gunbrella is an action platformer where you play as a man out for revenge, and all he has is a gunbrella. For those unfamiliar with this item, it's what it sounds like. A gun you can shoot enemies with, as well as an umbrella that allows you to dash, float, and block enemy fire. And that is where this game succeeds. Moving around feels really fluid and fun, and the gunbrella feels powerful to use. So I was excited to see how they would expand on the core concept and keep gameplay interesting. And that's, to me, where the game falters. If I could describe Gunbrella's issues in one word, it would be shallow. It does interesting things on the surface, but if you look for any depth, there's none there. There's very little variety in the enemies you face, nor in the platforming challenges or upgrades. And the story teases some interesting themes about religion, greed, and fatherhood, but never actually explores them. It feels like the writers wanted to make their story seem cool at a glance, but didn't have the opportunity to really write anything of substance. I don't like being negative about games, so I'll try to be brief about some examples that support my opinions. First is the upgrades in the game. You can increase your health, damage, and reload speed. That's it. None of these things actually augment the gameplay. They're just a requirement so the difficulty remains consistent. You can get different ammo types for the Gunbrella, but the standard shotgun is completely viable the entire game, so I never felt compelled to switch it up. Enemy-wise, there isn't a ton of problem solving in how you deal with them. There are a couple you have to block, and the rest you just dash up to and shoot. It gets slightly more difficult in the final level, but it's mainly due to the number of enemies. You aren't doing anything new. And then there are the bosses. There aren't many bosses in this game, but the majority of them are pretty easy and surprisingly cheesable. I won't show gameplay due to spoilers, but there were a couple I get to sit in a corner and kill within seconds. I'm a little more positive on the platforming. There's one level in a factory that I thought had some cool ideas and asked you to perform some interesting moves, but that was kind of it. The rest of the game is pretty straightforward to move through. To give some compliments, I think the pixel art looks great, and this game is very well polished. There are lots of little touches they put in, like a few conversations between NPCs. But looking at the game as a whole, I would have rather they cut these and spent more time developing the story's themes, or making the gameplay more interesting. So to wrap up, Gunbrella is a fine game. It's fun enough to move around and shoot stuff, but at the end of the day, there wasn't much substance. However, it's clear that Doinksoft has talent as a developer, so I'm looking forward to the next project to see if they can create a more well-rounded experience. So those are my thoughts on some of Devolver's biggest 2023 releases. Even though Gunbrella was a bit disappointing, I'm still very happy I decided to make this video, because both Terra Nil and the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood were incredible surprises. And looking ahead to 2024, Devolver doesn't appear to be slowing down with the hits. The Plucky Squire looks like it's taking all the best elements from Zelda and Mario Odyssey and putting them in a humorous and stunning to look at package. Skate Story, where you play as a demon made of glass skateboarding through hell, might be the coolest game coming out this year, and I can't wait to vibe out to the soundtrack. Pepper Grinder is one of my favorite game titles of all time, and the drilling looks pretty fun too. Angerfoot resembles Doom, but even faster, angrier, and with dancing crocodiles. And finally, I'm excited to hear the life lessons Bennett Foddy has to give me in baby steps as I play as an emotionally stunted homebody trying to touch grass.
Oh, can you not?
If all these games come out in 2024, it'll be a great year for Devolver and for indies as a whole. Thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope you discovered a new game to play or one to add to your wish list for 2024. If you love any games or want to learn more about them, subscribe to my channel. I definitely want to make more videos highlighting indies in the future. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.